Well, good afternoon and welcome to Meet the Expert. I am Elliot Kallen, CEO and President of Prosperity Financial Group, and I want to welcome you here today. It's July 7th, right after our July 4th Independence Weekend. We're excited. This is the 12th episode of Meet the Expert. This is going to be our final episode in this series. Then we're going to take a break, change the format around a little bit with some personal interviews, and get back to this again in the fall with some experts again. We've had great responses. I was just hearing from Chris, who's been producing this show, and thank you, Chris, for the 12 series, that 30,000 people watched one of these episodes. That's our most watched one over on Facebook and LinkedIn and on our website. And let me give you that information. If you want to send me a note, send me a question, or take a look at who we are. We've got other advisors here besides myself. My website is Elliot, E-L-L-I-O-T, at Prosperity, F as financial, G like group.com, prosperityfg.com. Elliot's 2 L's and 1 T. I can't tell you why it doesn't have 2 T's. Mom's not around for me to ask. And then the website is www.prosperityfg.com. And we are excited to have you here. Again, ask any question you want. Here's what's going to be going on today. We've got 2 great speakers. I've been speaking to them for the last few minutes. Corrine Christensen, who's a personal stylist and associate partner with Hillburn, will be our first speaker. And Craig Judson, a good friend of mine, who's an estate planning expert, among other law that he practices. But he's going to be talking about estate planning in this very interesting days, a very interesting time of COVID. So we've got all types of shows that we put on, from Social Security to survival to Medicare to understanding how to motivate yourself to exercise. And I've got to do more of that myself. I want to tell you a cute story before we get started in today's program. And this is what happens when you stay in the program, when you stay inside long enough and you start going a little stir crazy. I've had dogs in my life. I've had cats. Right now we have a 10-year-old cat, beautiful little girl. And yesterday my wife bought a riding carriage, a baby carriage for the cat. And she took the cat for several walks with my grandson, who's 7. And took videos of it and sent me the videos. And the cat actually enjoyed the walk and just sat there. And I don't even know what to say. I don't know. I'm afraid we've become those cat people that we make fun of all the time. And then last night, to make it even worse, when I got home, the cat jumped into the carriage and started to meow like she wanted to go for a walk. So I'm totally confused about what's going on with animals these days. They're just as confused. So let's move on. Again, Elliot, E-L-L-I-O-T, at prosperityfg.com. We'll have a little bit of fun. And I want to talk to you about dressing for success. That's our first subject. Craig will be up second. So hang in there because Craig's a great dynamic speaker. You're going to love the stories he tells and how to talk about estate planning and even how to talk to your next generation about money when it comes to passing it on. So Corrine is an associate partner with Hillburn. That she's also a personal stylist. What does that mean? It means for people like myself that are in front of clients on a regular basis or in front of a camera now, without Botox and without makeup on, how do you dress for success? Because times have changed. I'm wearing a Hillburn shirt right now. Full disclosure here, with the collars there, the initials are there. My name's on the inside in case I get lost in my closet. I know it was made for me and not my wife or my grandson. And I have pants like that too, and they fit better over the course of my lifetime. And I have been buying custom shirts and custom clothes for 30 plus years. I have gone from buying them and where they're custom fitted to, and I'm an unusual person. I'm 5'8.5", and I have a 49-inch chest. So that's not the most unusual. That's not the most usual size. I bought them also at Men's Warehouse. I bought them at Joseph Banks or on the East Coast Today's Man. I bought it at Macy's. I bought things at Nordstrom's, and I've come back on a regular basis back to custom clothes. They last longer. They fit better. I feel better in them. They seem to hide my fat a little bit better, which is good. And I just feel maybe a little bit more manly in them. So I'm going to invite Christine to come on up here, or Corrine to come on up here and talk to us a little bit about why men's clothing, why custom. She's been doing this for 9 years, so I know she's heard all the things from people like myself, and I'm sure for you too. Corrine, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Elliot. I'm going to share my screen now. hang on with me just one moment here. Okay, I thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm super excited to talk with you and with our Zoom audience for dressing for success in this Zoom or virtual world, whatever platform you might be using. I'm going to do a little bit of a presentation on not just the clothing aspect of it, but the whole overall presentation. Appearing put together during video conference is an entirely different skill from making an impression at the water cooler. The current reliance on remote technology in the coronavirus pandemic has intensely blurred the line between work and home life. Our homes are now our offices, and people are looking for ways to create a better presentation. Some of the things we're going to talk about today: 6 tips for a better virtual presentation, wardrobe needs in this new environment, and also how to shop for the new work from home office. Many of you have probably seen this very funny YouTube video with the awkward team meeting. I'm not going to show that here today, but you should definitely look it up if you want to lighten your day just a little bit. It gives a whole new meaning to work from home comfort, and it's something that I want to help avoid all of you from experiencing. All right, so tips we're going to review today. We're going to talk about the camera angle, and we are going to talk about sound, lighting, background, hair and makeup, and your language. And we're not just talking about your verbiage. So let's talk about the camera. One of the things we really want to do is look directly at the camera. I'm using my desktop here, and I'm looking at the camera. I have a tip. I have a little sticker that is right by my camera so that I know where to look. It's very distracting to have a screen full of people, and you want to make sure that you are looking engaged. You're not looking out the window and seeing which Amazon truck is driving up with whatever you ordered. You can't even remember because they come every day now. Also, seeing yourself on screen is distracting. Many people tend to look directly at themselves instead of at the camera. Let's talk about the angle of the camera. I'm using my desktop. The camera viewing angle is 60 to 90 degrees, which is ideal. You want the camera just a little bit above you so that it's looking down on you, not looking up at you. The last thing you need is somebody looking up your nose or looking at that new double chin that you just acquired during the pandemic. Nobody needs to see that. External cameras are ideal as well. They have quite a variety of them out there. If you're looking for a better resolution on your picture, this might be something you want to look into. They tend to have better focus as well, but our laptops and desktops do manage to still produce a picture that's adequate. Sound. Excuse me. Sometimes I have problem with my sound on my desktop that I'm using, but I am in a small office with carpet, and so it, for the most part, tends to sound okay. Not echoey, not like you're in a tunnel. But if you are in a large room with a lot of tile, you might want to consider using a microphone. We have the external wireless microphones or a wired headset with a microphone. There's high-end microphones that you can get online. Also high-end microphone with a pop filter so that your voice comes through crisp and clear. Lighting, this is a big one as well. You really want to project your best image. So what you're looking for, the right light. The right light would be neutral light in front of your computer. That's the most ideal. If you don't have that, there's lighting attachments you can get, but let me just show you. Right over here, the overhead lighting tends to create shadows under our eyes. Side lighting only lights up half your face. The other half is still in the dark. So it's that natural light in front of your computer which shows that your entire face is the optimal what you are looking for. Don't place yourself with a window behind you. The glare that that can create is overwhelming, gives people a headache. They're not focusing on you and your message. They're focusing on the bright light and trying not to stare at it. Once again, external lighting. This is a great option. It lights up the whole screen. It's very popular with Instagram and Facebook storytelling. Background. Okay, you want your to try and keep your background calm and noise free. When there's a lot of distraction, once again, they're not focusing on your message. Make sure your background is clean. This is not a picture of my office. Actually, in all honesty, at one time it was, but not today. Also, animals, super cute. A lot of people have them coming in and out of their office. You just want to make sure they're not doing circus tricks behind you. You don't want them distracting from your message. If you do have a lot going on behind you, what you might want to consider is a virtual background so that they are focused on you and the presentation that you are giving. Hair and makeup. I don't know about you guys, but I know what I look like when it's an audio only presentation. What we want to do is make sure we are presentable. Audio only, bedhead, not with a full screen, just a little bit to clean yourself up. It doesn't take much. All you got to do is comb your hair. Doesn't mean you need to go and get that fresh blowout or have a fresh curled do or gelled. Just make sure your hair is clean and out of your face. Makeup. No need to overdo the makeup either. You're not on TV. You're not trying out for a presentation that's going to be broadcast all over. So just keep your makeup to a minimum. Watch your language. I'm not just talking about the verbiage that you're using. I'm also talking about body language. What you need to do, you need to watch your language. In this day and age, people are a little bit more relaxed while working from home. Nobody thought we were going to be here 4 months later, and here we are, and it's going to continue on for the foreseeable future. So what you need to do is know your audience. Who is it that you are talking to? Are you collaborating with coworkers? Are you presenting to your boss? Are you presenting to a client or a future client? If so, make sure you watch your body language. Be engaged. Look directly at the camera. Don't be wandering outside and daydreaming about what you're having for lunch. Really watch your body language. Remain positive. You don't need to go down that negative rabbit hole of why we are still shelter in place or not allowed to do all the fun things we want to do traveling this time of year. That's not something for you to be sharing on your presentation, especially with a client or a potential client. So before we go into wardrobe needs, I just wanted to remind you that coworkers can't see past what you show them. Sprucing up for a video conference is easy. Just follow these quick tips. But now let's talk about wardrobe needs. We're going to concentrate on being comfortable, being conservative, being clean, color, and confidence. Let's be honest. The casual trend in men's clothing has been growing for quite some time now, but that does not mean that all rules for dressing should be thrown out the window. The better you look, the better you feel, the more confident you are, the better presentation you can give, even from home. And as this 2020 year goes on, we are going to see that importance of work from home style increasing. This is the new normal. All right, let's talk about being comfortable. Make sure that your clothes fit well. Allow for breathing room. Nothing too tight that you're pulling on or fidgeting with. Nothing too loose so it looks sloppy. Give yourself that breathing room. You don't want people to see you sweat. Something that is too big is as distracting as something that is too small. Conservative. Dress in clothing that leans towards conservative. Basics are best. Dress so it doesn't distract from your audience. You want to create a pleasant background and not compete with what's going on behind you. General rules of thumb: no low-cut tops, tank tops of any kind, no strapless tops or crop tops, nothing unbuttoned, too low, or anything too sheer. You want them to focus on the message, not what you are wearing. Clean. Okay, I know I don't have to say this, but I'm going to. No stains, no rips, no holes, even wrinkles. All these things show up more on camera. Not only that, but it gives the impression to your audience that you're not paying attention to the details. You want them to know that you are detailed oriented and that you care about the message that you're giving. Color. This is a good one. Wear colors that you feel good in. Nothing too bright or too dark. Colors that tend to look good on camera are blues and greens and neutrals. Everybody looks good in one of these colors. If you find one that brings out your eyes, even better. Avoid wearing a color that blends into your background. Also, avoid patterns. Stripes and patterns tend to distort on these video conferences. They can also overpower your facial features and, believe it or not, but evoke emotional responses. You don't want yours to induce a negative emotion. If you must wear a pattern, have it be no more than 2 colors and a small pattern. Once again, we're focusing on that message and what you are trying to tell your audience. Confidence. Pick an outfit that makes you feel and look good. We're all juggling a lot of balls in the air right now, and the last thing you need to worry about is how you represent on your video. We all have outfits we feel great in. Pick a look and feel confident in how it's put together. Make sure it follows all the C's that we just talked about. If it's something that's new, make sure and give it a test run so that you know that you are comfortable for it in the entire video conference. All right, how do we shop safely today? It's a new environment, right? I mean, people don't really want to go out into a crowded store, but they are missing that as well, the little retail therapy. One way to shop safely is online. Online, you have your favorite brands and from your favorite stores. Everybody's making it easier to shop online these days. But what we're really seeing an uptick in is custom, made to measure and personalized shopping with an emphasis on personalization. There's an increasing awareness for sustainability. Throwaway fashion is quickly becoming taboo. This is where a personal stylist can come in handy. This person meets with you in person or via a video conferencing such as Zoom like we're using now. They'll discuss your wardrobe needs and wants and talk through the issues you have with your off-the-rack clothing. Depending on the vendor, this service is often complimentary with clothing purchases. Sustainability encompasses day-to-day practices in our homes, to shopping with companies that share common values for our future and that of our planet. The fashion industry is unfortunately infamous for having little regard in this area, but companies are waking up and they're realizing this and moving in the right direction. A unique process of providing a personal service directly to a customer minimizes any retail space encompassing a large section of environmental impact. From the energy and the waste used to the stores filled with endless sizes and colors, as well as the packaging that goes along with that, all have enormous effects on our environment. A virtual appointment is much more eco-friendly as it decreases carbon emissions. Working remotely not only services the current lockdown situation that we're in, but it's a modern way to shop without useless trips to the crowded shopping mall. A personal stylist makes shopping easy, convenient, stress-free, all while helping you build your confidence and look your best in a wardrobe that fits great. Basically, this person is a problem solver. Shopping today is not what it used to be, and that is a problem that a stylist can eliminate for you. So we talked about today tips for a better virtual presentation, wardrobe needs in this new environment, and how to shop for the new work from home office. Thank you again, Elliot. I really appreciate you having me here today. Are there any questions?
Good. Okay. We do have a few questions. Thank you, Corrine, for bringing that up. Let me put some levity in this for one moment too. And at the same time, you showed masks, and I know my wife has a J. Hillburn mask that she wears. I have my New York Jets mask and my New York Rangers mask. That was great. So you got to support your teams and do all that. I have some fun. But I really want to ask a question from a good friend of mine who's not with us anymore, unfortunately. And he's the one that talked to me about styling. When I went into it, he was president of a bank. And granted, that's a conservative world, and it's a different world from the 1980s. And he went into his closet and he said, I want to show you how to dress for success. And I was just in my early 20s at the time and trying to grow a mustache and trying to look professional. And he opened up his closet. He had about a dozen Navy suits, pinstripe Navy suits. He had probably 12 or 15 white shirts. He had 3 or 4 5 of the exact same ties, 3 pair of brown shoes to go with it. And so he knew his colors. He knew how he wanted to look. And so instead of buying the variety that we all buy, the blues, the pinks, the reds, the oranges, and all that, he figured this is what I look best in. He did that. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it for somebody that needs the consistency and the easiness of picking out their wardrobe day to day. Maybe he is super busy on the go and the entire time and needs to not give his wardrobe a second thought. I think that's great that he knew what looked good on him and he could easily go to his closet, pick it out, put it on, and walk out the door feeling comfortable and knowing that he looked the way he wanted to present himself. So that's an easy option. For a lot of other people, they want a little bit more variety. Okay,
and then this like your firm, Custom Clothing, and other custom clothing firms, do they make clothes that have they thought about the Zoom world and this world that, one of the questions that, okay, when I meet you face to face, I have one look because I'm standing, but now all I do is sit. And for guys like me, who are a little bit on the stocky side, it's a nice way of saying it, a little bit on the stocky side, I know when I sit, I look stockier. And some people that don't does the world of clothing measure up, so to speak, to the new Zoom world in that?
Well, that's the exact reason of why we really should be wearing clothes that fit us. Wearing something that's a little bit too big makes us just look bigger. Wearing something a little bit too tight makes us look bigger. So you got to get that middle ground where having it fit, tailored, and comfortable, and you're not fidgeting with yourself. You got to remind yourself to sit up straight. That's the hardest thing to do, right? When you lean back in your chair, sit up straight, and that will help also slim you down some.
Okay, and I've got one more question for you. So I know for me, I've learned I have blue eyes with an orange rim in the inside of them. Actually, it's really interesting eyes. And I'm wearing, might look like black glasses, but they're actually blue glasses. And I've learned that royal blue is probably the best color on me because it brings out my eyes. So why don't I just go and buy a dozen royal blue shirts from you and maybe charcoal pants to go with them and make my life easier if I know that is the very best color on me?
And that's something you can definitely do, but you might also want to show your personality a little bit. And your personality, I know that you have a lot of contrast in the color of your shirts. You like to have fun and you don't want to be boring. That's not your personality. And that's why you want to have variety in your closet. So even though you know what looks best on you all the time, you are also looking for something that represents you as a person and how you want to engage with the people that you are around. So you're picking shirts out that have a little bit more fun on them. Let's say when you're doing your virtual wine tasting or something like this today where we're talking about fashion. So you want to show that you have fashion, that you know what the color looks good on you, but you know that you have taste outside of just what you're wearing.
Okay. And so I want you to know that we did get a comment from another attorney who's on the East Coast who said, who made a comment that said, nice shirt. So,
excellent. I'm so happy to hear
a
that.
custom shirt. It's anyway, you get the idea before I take it off and reveal.
You got to remember, keep it conservative and buttoned up, Elliot.
Forgot all about that. Forgot where I was for a moment. Corrine, I want to thank you very much for being part of this today. That's great. And if somebody has a question for me or wants to reach us, Corrine, what's a good email that they can reach you at if they have questions regarding their own style and so forth? What's a good email?
Thank you. It would be CORRINChristенsen@jhillburnpartner.com.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being part of this. You can send her a note. You can, of course, send me a note anytime, Elliot, ELLIOT, @prosperityfg.com. And we're going to be posting this back on our website in about 4 or 5 days, www.prosperityfg.com. So, Corrine, thank you. Let's move on to part 2 or part B of our show. So this is the last part of the show before we take a break for the summer on Meet the Expert. This is the 12th series. So you are about the 20th speaker, Craig, that we've had. And so let's just say we saved the best for last. How's that? And so I know Craig for a long time. He's a personal friend of mine. And I know his entire family. He has been an estate planner since I've known him. He does other law besides that. I'm sure he'll tell you that. Been a partner in a firm in Walnut Creek. The firm is in Walnut Creek. Firm is Bold, Polisher, Maddow, Nelson, and Judson there. And I had to write that down, Craig, so I get it right this time. And Craig's going to talk to you. You know, we've got a funny age. I have a friend of mine, as a matter of fact, my best friend growing up, his 91-year-old mom just died of COVID. And luckily she had everything in place, but she had one daughter that she decided not to leave any money to because the daughter was kind of a crappy daughter. But she has children. So she left money to her children, and then he didn't need the money. So he forgone the money, forgave the money, whatever that might be called. So it would go to his children, and the other sister did take the money. And so it gets complicated. And I would love for you to talk about the difference of being fair and being equal with your children, since that is a tough issue for a lot of parents. So Craig, come on with us.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Elliot and Prosperity Financial Group, for inviting me to speak this afternoon. And Corrine, you did a great job, very interesting. And I am also wearing a Hillburn shirt. The tie, though, is UC Davis. It's my Aggie tie. I love to wear it when I teach. I am an adjunct professor at the law school at UC Davis. And my favorite class that I teach is a practical skills course in wills and trusts, and trying to teach young budding attorneys this area of the law, and because it's very different than everything else in the law. This is an area where we can make huge strides, huge contributions to the quality of people's lives, and giving them reassurance that their wishes and desires and their personal needs will all be met in a time of crisis, or if they take ill or pass away. And it's an area of the law where we can have a lot of heart. People think of lawyers as the courtroom bulldogs. And yes, there are times that I can be a courtroom bulldog, but many times it's about helping people. And that's a strong philosophy that I learned from my father many years ago, who was an attorney. And I'm now trying to pass that on, not just through my work with clients, but my associates in my firm and the students that I teach. So these are really interesting times that we're in. Probably no one on this video remembers back to 1918 and the Spanish flu and that pandemic. And if there is someone here who's 102 years old, God love you, and I hope you live to 120. But life has really changed these past 4 months. I'm not in my office, that's a virtual background, and I'm working out of my house. My wife works out of the house, and we can't make those same client connections that we used to make before. But thankfully, we do have the technology. We do have Zoom and Blue Jeans and a number of other programs that are out there. And so I do use this a lot for communicating with clients, or I'll FaceTime with them if they're not Zoomers, because I need to make that personal connection with them in trying to figure out what it is that they want, what it is they need, what's important to them. Also very interesting is we're now making court appearances virtually. This morning, my associate argued an appeal with the First District Court of Appeals in San Francisco. And the justices and court personnel and the attorneys were all at different locations. And it worked very nicely. Not the same thing as actually being in a very fancy, beautiful courtroom in San Francisco at the Court of Appeal, but we are finding new ways to connect with one another. And that takes me really to the first topic I want to discuss, and that is, what is the greatest fear that people have in getting older? I wish we had a situation where we could have an open discussion and you could give me feedback, but let me share a few things with you. It's been in 35 years of practice, I've found the biggest concerns people express to me is running out of money, losing their memory, not knowing where they're going to live when they get older, who will take care of them, the loss of independence. God help us. When somebody has to give up those car keys, that's a really, really hard thing to deal with mom and dad or your great aunt. People worry about poor health and being neglected by family and friends and the inability to control their daily life and their activities. All these things lead to a loss of engagement, a loss of spirit, mood, and attitude. There have been a number of studies the past few years, and the general findings are the number one worry, statistically, is loss of independence. And number two is declining health. And so some of these studies have looked at what causes us to age at a faster rate. And very interestingly, the findings by a JAMA study through UC San Francisco several years ago found that there's a real link between loneliness, between social isolation, and poor health and early death. And this is something that really worries me these days with the pandemic, because seniors aren't getting out. They're not connecting. They don't go to church or synagogue or their card games, or just get together with friends and go to the movies. They are feeling more isolated. We have a very good friend who's 95 years old, sharp as a tack. She lives in assisted living, and my wife and I look out for her. She's outlived her husband and her daughters, and the grandchildren aren't close. But she sits in her apartment all day. She watches a lot of news, and that's not necessarily healthy these days either. But she feels like she's aging very, very quickly, and we can see the look on her face when we FaceTime with her. So adults age 60 and older who identify themselves as being lonely are 59% more likely to experience a decline in their ability to perform activities of daily living. And they are 45% greater likelihood of dying. This is a 6-year study, and it's really interesting that people who are connected, people who stay active into their later years, live longer and they live healthier. And now, what does all this have to do with being a lawyer? Well, no one can predict what functional declines that we'll run into. But we do know premature death is caused by that. And that's something that I look out for with my clients. And because of so many uncertainties, it all has to come down to planning. So I thought I'd spend a few minutes with you and talk about maybe some of the most frustrating legal and practical issues that I have encountered in 35 years of practice. Why frustrating? Because the vast majority of these issues could have been avoided. How? Planning. Some of the planning issues will save people a tremendous amount of time, distress, frustration, and certainly money. And in times of crisis, it's always good to know who to go to. You know, where did mom and dad keep their money invested? Who's their attorney? Who's their accountant? Elliot knows I'm a very big believer in the team approach of professionals to help guide our clients in times of distress. So Jeff was 38 years old. He had a wife, 2 kids, ages 8 and 6. He was the CFO of a large company. He had no will, no trust. The assets were in Jeff's name from a prior marriage. Who inherits if he suddenly dies? He contracts COVID or has a heart attack? Wife? Children? This situation is fraught with legal complications and years of court appearances, especially with a child as young as 6 years old. That would mean 12 years of court appearances for a guardianship that would be mandatory to set up, because without a will, without any type of estate planning documents, the estate would pass 1/3 to his wife, 2/3 split between the children. And if the children are under 18, we have to form a probate guardianship, where the court appoints someone, could be mom, to become the legal guardian and manage their funds. But how does mom access all the funds that she would need to support herself and her children? It's complicated and it's expensive. David was a complete mess. His grandmother passed away and left half to each daughter, Sarah and Rebecca. Years later, Sarah died, but she had a trust. She named her only son, David, as her beneficiary. David never knew his father. His father took off slightly before he was born, and he had no relationship with his father. There was a daughter that was born, but mom put her out for adoption many, many years back, and no way of knowing how to find her. Well, David never saw an attorney. He got access into some of mom's accounts, took a death certificate in, liquidated her IRA, sold her house, didn't file tax returns for 7 years. He spent all the money, at least all the money he could get control of. And then he overdosed on drugs because that's how he spent his money. So he was found in the house, and his aunt called me. And she says, "My nephew passed away. This is tragic. I need your help." And who inherited? Well, of course, the first thought was his aunt would be his closest living relative. And besides, the money came from his maternal grandmother's side, so it's only natural that it would all go to his aunt. But David did have a father. And the judge, when we opened probate, made me do a nationwide search to try to find his father. We found the father was deceased. His aunts and uncles were deceased. But a second cousin twice removed on the East Coast and her siblings were entitled to inherit half the estate. Someone David didn't even know ever existed. Never knew them, they never knew him, but they were entitled to inherit his estate. And in the meantime, he left us with a horrible mess of trying to figure out what to do with a very sizable, close to $500,000 tax bill from the IRS and also from the Franchise Tax Board. Even though it turned out there was only about $20,000 in taxes owed when we were done, the government just took everything he liquidated and called it 100% income, and we're proceeding that way. So intestate succession, the intestate, to die without a will, means a real loss of control. You do not control who inherits from you. And those complications can be plentiful. Certainly court costs, family issues, taxes, are all things that we just can't avoid. I have another client, Diane. Her husband died about 7-8 years ago. They have no children, but her husband had children from her first marriage, and she was close at the time with her stepchildren. But after her husband died, she just didn't see them quite as often. They stopped coming around, stopped calling. She was living alone in the house. Her neighbor next door was a saint, still is, and would check in on her regularly. But she was lonely, very, very lonely. And she forced the housekeeper to bring her a couple bottles of booze each week in order to keep her job going. And so Diane became an alcoholic. And finally, early onset dementia set in, partially alcohol induced. She lands in the hospital, thinks she's had a terrible stroke, and can never live alone again. She did not have a stroke. Doctors could never figure out what caused the paralysis. It did all come back. But I assisted her neighbor in getting her moved into assisted living. And she did have an estate plan in place. I had drafted something years before for Diana and her husband. And it was easy. We knew who would step in, who would be her trusted people to look out for her, to make sure she gets all the proper care and support she needs, that her assets are maintained, her bills are paid, and all that was her neighbor, not the stepchildren. The stepchildren will someday inherit, but that's just not the way the plan, was developed. She just didn't trust them to be able to handle things for her. And as it turned out, they weren't there when the chips were down. So we run into lots of issues dealing with incompetency and in conservatorships, which is basically a probate proceeding when court appoints someone to manage your affairs, personal and asset, during your lifetime if you're not capable or if you don't have an estate plan, such as having a trust or other vehicles that will help keep you out of court and keep your legal expenses down and make things simple. Another big error I find with people is they've paid an attorney, they've developed their estate plan, they have a trust, certification of trust, a pour-over will that leaves everything to the trust, powers of attorney, but they never transfer their assets into the trust. And this is a very common problem because when they take ill or become incapacitated or they die, this whole plan in a trust just doesn't work so well because the assets are still in the decedent's name. And so it creates real hassles. So it's really important that if you have a trust, that you take a look, is your house titled in the trust? Is your brokerage account titled in the trust? Or your bank accounts titled in the trust? Cars, not so much, unless you're driving around in a Ferrari Testarossa and it's worth more than $162,500. But otherwise, all of your major assets should be titled in the trust. If you take ill and your successor trustee needs to take over, then it's really easy. And many times can be done without ever having to go into a courthouse. And you regain capacity, you take over control over your own assets again. Another complication that we see, and then all these things are coming to light these days because people are home and they're thinking about a lot of things and they're worried that if they go to the grocery store, they'll catch the virus. And so I do get a lot of calls from clients who just want to chat and just talk about, do I have everything set up right, just in case? So another one is planning for family dynamics. Many families have that wayward child, like Elliot mentioned. The one child who just hasn't seen mom or dad for 20 years, wanted nothing to do with them after they grew up, moved out. There are families with special needs beneficiaries, children who are severely disabled, that could never begin to manage their money or manage their own life, determine their housing and clothing and medical decisions. Those things all need to be part of the planning. Whether assets should be distributed in cash or what we call in kind. Does one child get the house and the other one gets the investment account? Because one already has a house and the other one will never have the ability to get themselves into owning real estate and take advantage of some of the tax issues that go with that. Elliot asked the question about fair versus equal. Great question, Elliot. What is fair? Fair is what you want it to be. No one has a right to inherit. No one has a right to anticipate an inheritance. We do not have to leave our wealth that Elliot's created for us to our children. We can leave it all to charities. And I just had a client a few months ago, right before the lockdown. He said, my kids have plenty of money. They want to leave it all to charities and help more people. And the same thing goes for equal. And I'm finding more and more that people say, I have 3 kids and 2 of my kids are very successful. They'll never hurt for money. They'll be able to live a wonderful life. But my 3rd child has never pulled it together. So I want to leave more to that child. But how do I do it so it doesn't get squandered? Like David in my example, who spent all his inheritance on drugs. There are ways to set up trusts for the disabled child, the wayward child, the child who has just different needs and desires. and to either have a family member, a sibling or an aunt or an uncle, grandparents manage that trust, or even a neutral person, a professional fiduciary. My wife's a professional fiduciary. She had to go back to school and get another certificate post graduate in fiduciary management, and she gets appointed by the court very often to serve as a trustee or an executor or a conservator for people. There's a lot of people in our community who do not have anyone, no one they can truly turn to, like our friend Ruth. And so we've, in a sense, adopted her, and she's adopted us. And at 95, we don't let her drive anymore, but Jill does all her banking, pays all her bills. We held her 95th birthday on Zoom with friends and family from around the country. It was wonderful. So there are, if you are someone in that situation, you don't have kids or the kids aren't close, who's going to hold your hand if you end up in the emergency room at 2 in the morning? There are people in the community that can be contacted, that can get to know you while you're healthy. And when the chips are down, they will be there to support you and fulfill all of your needs. And so that ties in with also, how do we plan during a time of incapacity? And we used to think of things in terms of who manages our money if we're incapacitated. But today, the issues go far beyond that. I teach my students that the most important document that we can draft for a client is not the trust or the will or the deeds to property or even the financial power of attorney. They're all very, very important. But the most important is the power of attorney for healthcare, the Advance Directive. This is a document that deals with you as a human being, not with your money. So if you were ever incapacitated and could not make your own healthcare decisions, one, who would you want to be there to talk to your doctors and to work with them to be sure you're given every possible opportunity to live a wonderful life after you recover? Or if recovery is not possible, at what point you say no more treatment or do everything possible? The power of attorney for healthcare, also known as an Advance Directive, is a very, very powerful document. It deals with us as human beings. And I teach my clients and my students to picture a situation. If you're lying in a hospital bed in a coma, and the doctors just don't know if you're going to wake up or not. And if you do wake up, would you be the same person we knew before? Well, hypothetically speaking, God gives you 1 minute to sit up in bed. We know you've heard everything that's been said because hearing is the last thing to go. And you wake up, you open your eyes, and there's your doctors and your family, your trusted friends, whoever it would be. What would you say in that 1 minute? What would you say? I want to live. I want you to do everything possible. Or I'm 120 years old. It's okay. I'm tired. It's been a wonderful life, and it's okay to let me go. Or something in between. What if you have advanced dementia and you take ill? To what extent would you want treatment, surgery, and the like? What if you need a feeding tube put in for a temporary condition? There's a whole litany of issues. Do you want to stay in your house for the rest of your life? Are there certain people you do not want to be permitted to see you because you think they'll just come in like vultures and start circling, waiting for the money? So we have a very interesting opportunity to take stock in what we personally want, what we would say if we were capable and became seriously ill. And so that is a major part of an estate plan. Now, many of you may already have powers of attorney where you check off the box. And many times it's statutory form. You can print off the internet. You check the last box that says all of the above. And so you have the authority to make healthcare decisions. You have the authority to consent to treatment or withdraw treatment, to sign a DNR. I do not believe that's the proper kind of document to have. Sure, it gives legal authority to somebody, but how do they know what you want? They should be acting in your best interest. And so I spend time with my clients to try to help them figure out what they would like, what they've discussed between spouses or told the children. And then we take the time, we put it in writing. So in a sense, you are talking to your family, you're talking to your spouse and your children or whoever your trusted caregiver is, and your doctors, and saying, this is what I want to be done. And it's important, and I find of all the documents, this is the one document the clients get the most satisfaction of knowing that they don't want to linger on forever. They don't want to be a vegetable and just kept alive by a machine. Or they do. I mean, it's whatever you want. There are no rules. So how do we do all this, especially in this time of a pandemic? So when I've been getting calls recently from clients, say, well, one, we should go back and take a look at your estate plan. And even on Zoom, sometimes I'll pull it up on the screen and we can look at it together. You know, do you still want Aunt Sally to be the one to be guardian of your children? Or your kids now 18 and they don't need a guardian. The people you named as trustees and executors, are they the right people? So we'll go through that and we'll review their healthcare desires. Say, let's make sure all of your assets are funded into a trust. And so we have title done properly, and you need to go out to the bank, find a time when the banks don't have many people in it, wear your mask and gloves and go on in and get these accounts changed. And then talk to your professionals, talk to your financial planner, talk to your accountants. Make sure your financial planner, your accountant, and your attorney know each other, know how to find each other. If you become incapacitated and the three of us agree on a course of action that is in your best interest as far as the investments and minimizing taxes and making sure that your desires are all will be carried out, then that's a pretty good team. So I'm a very big believer in the team approach where we all are working for the welfare of our clients. So how do we deal with all this in times of distress and the pandemic when we're feeling lonely? And my wife calls a new disease called FOGO, F-O-G-O, fear of going out. And a lot of people have that. And connect with your friends. Call the relatives you haven't talked to for a while. Call Elliot and just chat and see how the millions are growing. Just try to stay connected the best you can. That's the best way to stay healthy, besides staying out of the big public areas where you might run into somebody who has the virus and doesn't know they have it. Bring your affairs into order. And then, like many of us, clean out the closets and use that time to read and relax and enjoy yourselves. Life will get better and the world will open up at some point and we'll all be back to eating in restaurants and taking our walks in the parks and things like that. So Elliot, I'll turn it back to you and I'm open to any questions.
So Craig, that was great. Thank you very much. First of all, Craig, as an estate attorney, and you've spoken now about estate planning and all the intricacies, and it's far more complicated than what you spoke about in this short period of time. What's the best way for people to reach you?
You can call my office. So the name of the firm, Gold, Polisner, Maddow, Nelson, and Judson, on the wall behind me in my virtual background. That is our reception area. bpmnj.com. B for Bold, P for Polisner, M for Maddow, N for Nelson, J for Judson.com. You can go to our website, get all the information, bios, and the like. You can drop us a note, send an email, or just give someone a call in the office. There's always 2 people in the office, well distanced. So we are not open to see clients in the office, but we will get back to you as quickly as possible. I don't charge for consultations. I just like to talk to people and see what I can do to help you.
Great. Well, here's a question that's come up. As you know, many of our clients own companies. They're small business owners. And the dream of many small business owners is to give their business to the next generation. Other ones want to cash out and sell it, but then there are those that want to give it to the next generation. And statistically speaking, and I know you know this, it's something like 80% of the next generation squanders the wealth of the previous generation and generally loses the business. And it's over 90% of the third generation. So much of which, Craig, is that I've started the business and I built it up. Doesn't matter what it's service or manufacturing, I've built it up. But I've been in the early days of cleaning out the garbage on Saturdays and making truck deliveries, if that's what we've done. And, and sometimes 7 days a week, and you can forget vacations. And I've earned a nice living now. What my children see is the nice living 20 years, 15 years later. And they want to do exactly what I'm doing now without paying any of the dues that have been paid. So is it really good advice that I've been giving and saying, listen, your children want the results of your business, not necessarily your business. Sell it, find a great buyer, split the cash with your kids if that's your goal, and let your children make out for themselves. What do you think?
Lots of different ways to handle it. There's not a one size fits all, but certainly succession planning and wealth preservation are big issues in both of our vocations. If you start planning early enough, there are ways to deal with it, to preserve the assets, to make sure that, let's say your kids don't want to go into the business like you, but they want to make sure they get the fruits of it. There are things that can be done during your lifetime with proper planning to minimize taxes. It's the people who don't plan just end up with a horrible, horrible mess and a huge tax bill, and the kids end up inheriting less and less. So it can be done, and it is something that you should think about. It's certainly something that I raise with my clients. Who's going to take over your business or your law practice or your medical practice if something happens to you? So, and it's an even bigger issue when you have more, let's say, someone with a manufacturing, type of business. There's a lot of brick and mortar and lots of employees. Those are more complicated. Yes, but there's real value in that business that will keep going on even though we might become incapacitated or retire or die. So plan early.
Should I sell it to my children or should I gift it to my children?
Great question. I've done both with clients. And sometimes it depends what is the best legal way to do it. Of course, gift tax is still out there, even though we have a very high exemption for gift tax and estate taxes. But if you have enough years to do it, you could do gifting. But if you want your kids to feel like they earned it, then we certainly can do a sale over time or a one-time shot, depending what it is. A lot of it comes down to working with the accountants as to what the tax implications are. Because if we have 3 ways to do it, we should pick the one that meets the need with the least amount of tax and cost involved.
And then if I'm interested in selling my business and I have a choice of being an S Corp or a C Corp, what do you generally recommend?
I don't. I leave that to the accountant. That could be why? Because there's different tax implications. You get the liability protection with a subchapter S corporation or a C corporation, but the tax implications are very, very different. And some of it would depend on what assets are actually held in the business. If you have an S and you have real estate, that works fine. But if you have a C corp and you liquidate, you sell the business and you liquidate the real estate, you might have a double taxation type. So a lot of factors that go into that. And that's another area where the team approach is really valuable.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Craig, for being part of this today. Again, Craig's a partner at the firm you're looking at, both Polisner, Maddow, Nelson, and Judson, and he's the managing partner. The last name is the managing partner of the firm. Congratulations.
I like to say we saved the best for last.
That's right. And with a big smile. So this is our 12th episode. This is our final episode for the summer. We have brought all types of terrific things to you, terrific ideas, terrific speakers. If you are listening and you yourself can bring a great topic to me, please reach out to me because we're going to do interviews, 15, 20-minute interviews. They'll be on a website. They'll be on Facebook. They'll be on LinkedIn. If that's a topic that people would want to hear, then we want to hear it as well. So I can be reached at Elliot@prosperityfp.com. prosperitymfg.com, like financial group, prosperitymfg.com, www.prosperitymfg.com. We've got lots of advisors in this office, Emmett and Jamie, Hank and Al, and we're all here to help you. You can make an appointment literally through the website if that's what you want to do, or you can give us a call. All of it works. So on behalf of your team at Prosperity Financial Group, on behalf of myself, I've enjoyed this series. We'll see you again very shortly. Have a great day.